All right. Well, are you ready?
I'm ready.
Okay, perfect. Well, everybody, welcome back to another edition of the Shop and Chivalry podcast. I'm excited for this guest today, running for mayor of my hometown, Ocean Springs, Miss Melanie Allen. How are you?
I'm well, Brian. I'm excited to be here with you. Thanks for inviting me.
Well, great. Yeah, and thanks for coming on. And as I told you before, I'm very nervous. So
I have no idea why you'd be nervous, but I was a little nervous because I've listened to some of your other podcasts, and they're quite intensive, and you have a great manner in getting people to maybe reveal things about themselves they didn't come in expecting to reveal. So
yeah, I've gotten that feedback.
Yeah, but you have a great style. And
Thank you. Well, hopefully that's very helpful for you and everybody out there to kind of get to know you more, because I think a lot of interviews today are just talking points.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's not actual conversations. And at the end of the day, especially at the local community level, you're electing a community member.
Yeah.
You know, somebody that has an organic side to them, and I think people deserve to know more than just small sound bites about
and I think they expect to know more.
100%.
They really do. And
100%.
It's different, like you said, on a local level, because on the national media, it seems everybody wants to get that 10-second sound bite.
Right.
And that's not enough on a local level. People want to know you. They want to know what your motivation is.
Sure.
And I think you're right. And this is a great vehicle for people to get to know me a little better.
I couldn't agree more.
So I'm here on this rainy, cold morning with you.
Well, let's start here. So first of all, who are you, Melanie?
Well, that's an interesting question. I'm a 60-ish woman who's a mom, a grandmother. I'm a work in progress.
Aren't we all?
Aren't we always? I'm a student of life.
Oh, I love that.
I'm thrilled to live where I do. I feel like it's such a privilege to live in Ocean Springs. And I'm a student of life. I think I'll go there.
Yeah.
I'm so in love with Ocean Springs.
Yeah.
And so grateful for the opportunity to live here.
And you're from South Florida originally?
I was actually born in Maine.
In Maine,
Lewiston, Maine, which old-timers will remember, I think was the site of a very famous Muhammad Ali fight where, was it Joe Frazier or Foreman went down with a mysterious punch in the first round.
Yeah.
But I'm from Lewiston. My family's actually from Boston. I was born a little bit early. The family was on vacation in Maine, so that's why I'm a Maine-iac, as they call it. My folks moved to Florida when I was about 7, so I grew up in Palm Beach, Florida.
Okay.
Married early in college, and my husband we moved to Mobile. He taught at the university there. So
excellent.
That's how I got to this part of the world.
How'd you find your way to Ocean Springs?
I owned a communications company, Brian, in Mobile, and I had a client in Biloxi. And my client was very high on Ocean Springs, kept saying, "Oh, you've got to look at this town. It's got such potential." And I would take my break from work in Biloxi, and I'd ride Highway 90. I'd go over the old bridge.
Sure. Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And I'd ride up and down Highway 90 in Ocean Springs, and I thought, there's nothing exciting about this town. And then I went back, and I said to my friend, I just don't see it. And she said, you got to go over the railroad track and go into town. I had missed that. So once I went over the railroad track and came down Washington, I had that first impression of love when you are under those trees, and you really see Ocean Springs.
100%. Yeah, I've been to more than 50 countries, 6 continents, and
I've traveled a lot, but you're ahead of me.
A little bit. Yeah, that's what the military will do for some of us. But yeah, there's something about, I've seen beautiful beaches, beautiful landscapes, but there's something about this place that just there's no place on the planet like it.
Yeah, it's an intangible.
Yeah, for sure. And when you talk about kind of coming to the trees on Washington, I had to leave to appreciate that, because when I came back and made that same drive, I started to get this appreciation for how all the hundreds of years old that these trees are, all the strength that an oak is, and we're mutually living among them. And it's as if the city's carved out of nature and nature permits us to be here. And it's a beautiful thing.
That's a great phrase. I love that.
Yeah. Thank you.
And you're right, because it's the abundant natural resources that we have that initially strike us. And then when you get to know Ocean Springs, you've used that term organic, and even though it's a phrase that everybody uses these days, it's still a good one because there is this intangible feel.
Sure.
And I think the Indians knew it when they were here. I think the explorers recognized it when they came here.
Yeah.
It was a healing place. Ocean Springs has always been that.
That's right.
It's certainly been for me. And there are some remarkable qualities about it. It's a special, special place.
Yeah.
It deserves protection because of that.
And there's a lot of that too. I mean, there's a tree committee here. There's people invested in maintaining the image, and really the image is more probably tied to the spirit of what Ocean Springs is.
I think you're right about that.
Yeah.
The trees are a huge issue for me, and I served on the city tree committee. I was appointed for 6 years. I was elected chair for 4. And that's an area where I think we really could do better.
Okay.
We're not actively and aggressively protecting our urban tree canopy. And it's so vital, just as we both discussed our
Sure.
first impressions of Ocean Springs and what makes it unique and a place you want to come back to, that you feel good about being in. And those trees are a huge part. Tree committee was essentially disbanded in the form that it had been for many years and retooled by the city last year.
Okay.
And the function of reviewing applications for trimming and taking down trees is now under the purview of employees of the city rather than volunteer citizens like it was.
Okay.
I'd like to see that changed. I think the whole tree issue in Ocean Springs is ripe for revisiting and remodeling it in a much more successful manner.
Okay.
If you want to go into that,
Sure.
okay,
Yeah, absolutely.
Sure. When I was on tree committee, Brian, the procedure was set up, and good-meaning people did this. If you have a tree, at that time there were 5 protected trees: live oak, magnolia, sycamore, cypress, and cedar. Magnolia. I think I've left magnolia out of that list. But since then, 2 have been taken off as protected trees. A homeowner would fill out an application. They'd go to building department, or they'd fill it out from online, fill out a form requesting changes to their trees or the tree being taken down. The application goes to the building department. The building department puts it in the file for the tree committee. We had a tree committee of 5 or 6 people who went out with a city employee. We would do site visits, make a recommendation. Tree committee's only an advisory board, never made the final decisions. It was set up in a manner that worked for a while, but as growth and stress has changed Ocean Springs, it's become much more of a divisive issue. And you had homeowners who really did not want the city telling them what they could take down or
Sure.
what they couldn't take down. And so the tree committee says, no, you can't take that tree down. We don't recommend it. We suggest you do X, Y, Z instead. If the homeowner still wants to appeal that, they go to the city. So now you're 2 weeks past where you were because you got to wait for the
Sure.
city. There's delay built in there, which really frustrated developers, frustrated homeowners.
Right.
And so you have the alderman sitting up there. You have tree committee who's put in a report requesting the tree not be removed for these reasons. The homeowner has reasons why they want it to come out. When you're sitting in front of the alderman, who do you think's normally going to get their way? It's going to be the citizen. And so it was set up so that there was a confrontational end to a lot of those, and it's unnecessary. I think education about why trees matter in your yards is an extremely important function for the city. There was so much controversy between the city and homeowners about getting things approved or not approved, and delays built in. There was bad will. The city decided to end it. They got rid of the people who were on the tree committee, and they've taken it in-house.
So it sounds like instead of solving the problem, they've vacated the problem altogether, but
Sort of, yeah.
at the expense of maybe what what the trees mean to the city. And people might listen to this and think like, well, they're just trees, but they're more than that to the citizens of Ocean Springs.
They are, and they actually work as well.
Yeah,
They have a lot to do with road runoff, with storm runoff, filtering of the air, soil retention.
Oh, sure.
A lot of issues that relate to trees that are extremely important. But the issue of not being able to have a design where you're welcoming citizen input into a process and resolving issues like that well, we've not been doing that well.
So that's interesting to me. So having citizen input into these decisions. Now, you've done some work in nonprofits, right?
A lot of work in
nonprofits. So that tells me a couple things. First of all, it says that you have experience in organizations that have a combined purpose.
Yes.
And so unlike the military, say, where you can leverage just blanket authority because of rank and file structures, you have to lead by building consensus. You have to lead by maintaining a common sense of purpose. Right.
You have to lead by allowing the answer to come out of the process.
Right.
And not always superimpose your own thoughts or lead because you have a vision. It's helping everybody else come to a vision together. That's part of leadership.
I think that perspective is uniquely suited for local politics.
I agree.
You know, and
vital to local politics.
Sure.
It is what makes local citizenry and governance work. Mm-hmm. When I first came to Ocean Springs, the first issue I got involved with was a cat issue in my neighborhood on Ward Avenue.
Go on.
You don't want me to go there?
I do. I'm a big cat fan. So.
Well, I'm a big cat fan too, but there was somebody in the neighborhood who didn't like the cats,
sure.
and they were bothering his birds, and he trapped a lot of neighborhood pets, and they disappeared.
Sure.
So that was my introduction to local politics in Ocean Springs. And I went down to City Hall with friends, and I listened. And, you know, the doors would boom open when somebody like Claire Brew would come in to address the group. And it was so small town. It was so charming. And we're bigger than that now. We're a much more bigger town, and we're more sophisticated, and the citizen input doesn't seem to be as welcomed as it was back then.
Sure.
But I think it's vital and important. But it was different than I lived in Mobile, and Mobile is a bigger city, but the charm of being able to go, stand in front of a podium for 3 minutes, have your alderman listen to you, try to be persuasive. It's a wonderful thing.
Absolutely.
It's a joy of small town.
Yeah.
And, people ask me, Republican, Democrat, why do I choose to be Republican? I've been Republican all my life. I can't tell you I've always pulled the party lever down for the full slate. No, I'm an individual.
I think it's unintelligent to do so. And the idea that just because you carry an R next to your name that you can only view through a specific party lens, I think is unintelligent. It's cheap.
Yeah, but it is part of where we are in our society right now. We're going through a growth pains in this country, whether it's adolescence of our democracy, what it is, I'm not sure. But we're going to get through this. That's the one thing I absolutely am sure of. But small towns are built for being Republican in a Republican model.
Sure.
It's small government. It's citizen-led. It's limited in the scope of government.
That's right.
And success and failure in this town is built on the backs of small businesses.
Sure.
And they're all individuals, many family-owned. So all of that imprints this very special community.
Yeah, and, with having so many small businesses in Ocean Springs and being such a great place for business, I think businesses carry the same sort of interest of the city that people have as well. And I know a big part of what you're trying to deliver is to make sure that the gateways into Ocean Springs kind of exude the sort of spirit of Ocean Springs and maintaining that. Do you want to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, I'd be glad to. My background in communications, I owned a small communications company that actually did very well. What you do in a communications company is you design plans for companies to tell their story.
Sure.
Excuse me. I also was a ghostwriter on some books for politicians.
Oh, no kidding.
A couple of books that did pretty well nationally.
No big deal. No big deal.
The disadvantage to that is that you have to sign an NDA, and you can't talk and brag about it. So, but in small businesses or any kind of business, you find that the core, you define that business, you create an image for that business, and you want to share that image. And Ocean Springs is a business. We're a city full of neighbors and friends and visitors, and it's a great place. But the bottom line is we're a business, and we're competing for disposable dollars from anybody who's going down the interstate or going down Highway 90. And they now have choices. You know, after Katrina, the main business part of Ocean Springs was not destroyed. We had that huge advantage.
Yeah.
The others, our sister cities across the coast, didn't have that. And so we were celebrated, and it was a great place that was still functioning after Katrina to a large extent. In the years since, Biloxi has cranked up their game. Gulfport has certainly. Billy Hughes is doing a spectacular job over there. The Bay, all those places are doing well. Gaucher's doing well, and Pascagoula's cranked up what they're doing. They all understand public art. They understand beautification.
That's right.
And all of these things we were ahead of in Ocean Springs. And so now there's competition. So telling the story of how you want to tell the story of Ocean Springs and have people make that decision to come see you, it's just the same as going down Highway 90 and picking a fast food restaurant.
I certainly agree.
It is. And the image that we project, if you're on that interstate or however you come in, you're going to come through 57 from the east. You're going to come down 609 from the north. You're going to come over that bridge from Biloxi. We don't want people to make the same mistake I did initially and just go down
Drive
90
through.
and assume that was Ocean Springs. Nonetheless, we have a responsibility for branding ourselves at that first impression.
I agree.
I think that's extremely important.
Yeah, and it's interesting. I didn't realize that Dollar General was putting up a store where it was, and I actually realized it when somebody was coming down for the holidays and they had posted on Facebook, said, you know, why would the first business you see be a Dollar General? But I think it highlights the importance of these businesses where we don't want to turn away business, but goodness, like you've got to help us help you out. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And you have to. We'd like you to come here and invest in the city, but we also don't want to lose the spirit of the city because we're commercializing everything.
We'll become everywhere, anywhere.
That's right.
And that remarkable feeling that you and I started talking about that exists in Ocean Springs emanates from that.
Yes.
It emanates from those businesses, from the spirit of the community, from the natural resources,
Yes.
from our opinion of ourselves. And we have to have a consistent vision. I just got through serving on a wayfinding committee for the city. Carolyn Martin and the planning department have put together a process, got some grant funds. They're looking at ways to revision the logo, signage, public information in the city, making it consistent. And we had a lot of discussion during that process of who we're trying to invite into Ocean Springs. Some people just want to think the millennials are our future, and I think they're part of our future, absolutely. But my background in marketing and in communications design tells me you never put your eggs all in one basket. No. We need to know the pie that makes up the diverse economy and the diverse people, the diversity of the people who visit Ocean Springs and spend their money there. So the purpose of this wayfinding committee is, again, to sort of brand the community through visual things, but the visual things need to follow the feel and the vibe of the community.
Sure.
And it's all about civic pride.
Yeah, it's interesting. Art is sometimes called the expression of self.
Yeah.
And so with an artistic community, I think you can kind of transition that to say that the city is an expression of the individuals, you know, and especially an artistic city such as this one. You know?
I think you're right about that. I had a great conversation with a lady named Sandra Boget who lives in Ocean Springs. She's a very talented writer. And one of the great parts, Brian, about this campaign is I'm getting to go have coffee and visit with people safely. You know, door to door has to morph into something else because of COVID.
Right.
But sitting on porches with people and listening to them has been such a joy for me. And Sandra was explaining her thesis, which is it's not enough to say that Ocean Springs is an art-centric or arts community because you minimize the definition. She feels that the art from Ocean Springs and along the coast came from the hard work of the immigrants who came here. That the art shows or was another way for them to express their feeling after shucking oysters or fishing or working in factories. And she sees that great correlation between work and art. And it's really struck me since then. You know, you look at Walter Anderson's art is certainly the most predominant in Ocean Springs, but many of his drawings relate to art that relates to work.
Sure.
It's people trolling for oysters, people fishing, people building things. And there's that great combination between hard work, sweat, the story of lives that are not easy, working lives, and the expression of that in art is really germane to this community. This has not always been a wealthy community. There's been a combination. In Ocean Springs, for example, we have a higher than average per capita income. Household income is higher. Average price of a house is higher than most of the state. Education level is higher. And certainly the priority we put on education down here is fantastic. But telling the story of a community through their branding and through their gateways is extremely important, and it needs to be a conversation that we have in this community from day one. We're behind on that conversation. We can talk about typefaces, we can talk about colors, printing. All of that may present the city in one way. But we have to, as a community, say what our priorities are. Is it a Dollar General coming off the bridge from Biloxi? Is that acceptable? It's legal. It's absolutely legal. Good folks own that property. They're entitled to make a profit. We have to rely at this point on the aldermen to work with the building department to ensure that the developer maximizes the resources as far as trees, green space, hopefully the parking and maybe some pervious parking. But the Dollar General is a great example of what happens when you're reactive and not proactive. Dollar Generals and all the type of Dollar Generals, they're great companies. They're doing great on the stock market. If you own any of them, they're doing well. Yeah,
those dollar stores are the primary competitors for Walmart, in fact.
Yes, indeed. And some cities, I'm not recommending this for Ocean Springs, but in reading about this as a result of learning the Dollar General was going up there on 90, I did some background about other cities who face the issue of so many of those shops coming in. I mean, I go to the Dollar General on Government Street myself. You save money. Some cities have put in ordinances where you can't have more than one Dollar General or dollar store within 5 miles of each other.
That's interesting.
You can make those changes. Excuse me.
It's all right.
You can put in those restrictions in a community if you have to. But in my situation where I would be for less government, less regulation, market-driven economy.
With citizen input.
You don't want to mandate that they can't be more than 5 miles.
Right.
But there is some way with vision for this community, again, to be proactive and say, we have a limited amount of property that's available coming off the bridge from Biloxi. We have a limited amount of property coming down from the north on 609, a limited amount coming in from 57. What is the best use of what's available for us to tell our story to people coming into town?
And as a tool to answer that, you're suggesting, and I think correctly, that the right citizen input will make the best possible decision for those questions.
I always have faith in citizens to make good decisions. I always do. And, in theory, that's all government is. It's just citizens collectively making decisions.
That's the way Aristotle talked about it. So
well, you can't get any more pure than Aristotle. My goodness, go back to the classics on that. But this city is at a crossroads. We are not the city we used to be. And we're not the city we are going to become. And we're in that period of adolescence, maybe that gawky growth. I remember when my boy was 11 and I couldn't keep him in school uniforms because he was growing an inch like every month. And his feet growing too, with shoes. we're developing. Now, this is a city that was, formed in 1699. That's You'd say, well, how can you possibly be in your adolescence? But look what's happened to us since Katrina. It's amazing.
Yeah.
I mean,
it's completely
now
different.
I have a friend who lived on East Beach. God bless her. She's passed away. But her property was sold for $1 million and torn down and a new house built.
Wow.
There's a neighborhood not very far from me, a good middle-class neighborhood. Somebody just bought a house in there, tore it down, probably bought the house for $250,000, tore it down. They're building another one. It's happening all over town. We're infill. And the result of that can happen, and we can let it happen, and we can just adjust as we go, or we can say right up front, these are the issues we're going to face. When we have increased our density, it affected our trees, because now you've got lots being split. You've got high density where people want the trend now is the largest building on the smallest lot. Less maintenance. What does that do to trees?
Sure.
These are issues we should think about beforehand.
Yeah.
And the Unified Development Code, the UDC code, which went in last year partially, or the year before as well, has been thought about and envisioned, I think since Mayor Moran was in, but it was adopted last year by the city. And I understood at the time it was adopted, it was going to release us from having so many variants needed. We need a code change to this. We need to grant someone a deferral from this ordinance. It's happening it's all the time. Every meeting you go to, there's a setback change. There's a density change. What was the purpose of changing the overall code?
Yeah.
I don't understand that. I mean, I do, but it's not working out the way we thought.
For sure.
Density is here to stay, and it's caused a lot of problems.
Yeah.
The issue, you look at Front Beach, the tree issue on there with a lot that is going to go into litigation. We have a tremendous amount of litigation.
Is that the one they started development on?
Well, no, that's the one on Martin.
Oh,
that's
okay.
a townhouse. That's also a litigation issue. I don't think that one involves any trees, though, Brian.
Sure.
I think we can rest aside from that one. But, all of these are growing pains in a great city. And if we're not smart, businesses are going to go somewhere else. Some businesses, we don't mind them going somewhere else. But the decisions about what the future of Ocean Springs is going to be lies with the people in Ocean Springs.
I agree.
And it's one thing to post on Facebook. It's one thing to be brave and comment. It's another thing to get up and go down there to a meeting, volunteer to be on a board, make your opinion known, run for office, support someone who's running for office. Get involved in your own community. It's more vital right now than anywhere else.
Well said.
I'm so aghast at our national politics and the condition of our country. I think the one thing I would say is I think we were all so scared by what happened at the Capitol recently that it shook us to our core.
Yeah.
We don't want to see that. It's not a matter of pointing fingers. I think there's blame to go everywhere.
Yeah, that was an existential crisis playing out.
But any one of us, you were in the service, you obviously love your country. Anyone who loves America as much as we do had to cry. Your heart had to break for what we saw. And hopefully what it told us was each one of us has to step up right now, show our love for our country in some way.
And I think it starts at the local
It starts at
community
the
level.
local level, and that is, part of my motivation for doing this. Friends of mine have said, "What in the world? Why would you run for mayor?"
It is kind of a good question. It's a good question. But you talked about your motivation, and if I can peel back that onion just a bit, when I think of, again, your work in volunteer organizations and what volunteer organizations do, and kind of how you're talking about, your mayorship, so to speak.
Yes.
It seems to be principled, built-in principle, embedded in some sort of virtue or principle that creates a sort of ethical foundation for you. And when I ask people about this, I kind of ask them about their guiding light. What's their star?
What's their North Star?
What's your North Star, basically? Because again, when we think about the North Star, whether it's in Pinocchio wishing upon a star, whether it's the star that led 3 wise men to Bethlehem.
And didn't we get a kind of a great view of that this year with the planets lining
That's
up?
right.
That was enough
Amazing,
to make
right?
everybody take a moment and say, let me consider my life. And
Sure.
I mean, it was breathtaking.
Yeah, but you know, it's the star kind of represents the highest ideal.
Yeah.
And what is the highest ideal for you that gives you that motivation, that allows you to set the vision, to walk the path, to do something like run for mayor?
Gratitude. I have had an extraordinary life. I have been blessed. Each one of us can look at our life and you can view it with a negative prism or a positive prism. I'm in my 60s. I have enough perspective in life to realize the one thing I want to do for the rest of my days is to be grateful for what I've been given. And I feel a tremendous sense of responsibility for fulfilling my potential. I think that I've been given these gifts by God for a reason. And at my age, and I've been blessed to be retired and for a long time now, but you recognize that your life has purpose, and your purpose in life is to return the gifts that you've been given. And the worst thing that I can imagine, Brian, is for someone, when I pass away, to say, oh, Melanie, she was a nice person, but, man, she never filled her potential. And so I've gotten all these gifts from God and all these opportunities to continue to be a student of life, to try to learn as much as I possibly can. I think that's my obligation in life, is to learn as much as I can every day. Consider myself a bit of a mentor for some of the younger folks in Ocean Springs who are getting into nonprofits or getting into community service or in business.
You speak in that way.
Yeah, I think that's my role. I realized a few years ago that it changed from not just being a leader, but to also work with people who are going to be the next generation of leaders. And we're full of amazing people in Ocean Springs who are going to make the future of Ocean Springs bright. I have no doubt about it. I look at young people, young business people, entrepreneurs who are thinking outside the box and who are so committed. They see what we see in Ocean Springs. They feel that feel. They could go anywhere, and they choose to invest their money, their dreams, their potential in Ocean Springs. And so I feel my obligation is to work with those folks. But I also know, and it sounds so selfish to say I so much, because this is a campaign of we, but I stepped up. My friend Mark Talley was asking me, he's a great architect in Ocean Springs. He and his wife Madison are both talented architects. Mark said to me the other night at a party, he said, Melanie, I've known you a long time. He said, you know I love you. But he said, I just worry about your mental health. Because what would make someone take a perfect life and run for mayor? Because and I had to answer that. I felt driven to do it. I have been approached by people over the last several years to get involved, run for alderman, run for mayor. I had one run at alderman in 2012 in a special election when Bobby Cox and I both ran as Republicans when Troy Ross moved to the county. And I did not run a good campaign. I should never have run. Bobby was the right candidate, and he's done a great job as alderman. We got to know each other, and we're friends to this day. In the meantime, since then, I've been very involved. I'm not the person I was then, and I know this community, and I'm very comfortable with the idea of leading. So my motivation is always to do the best I can in any moment. I feel like every one of us is sitting here just having this conversation. We each have an opportunity to be a positive or a negative in every moment.
Sure.
And I know the difference. You can project your own future being a negative person always.
Yeah.
You can find the worst in every person you meet if you project that. But if you're full of gratitude because you know how many blessings you've been given in life, regardless of your religion, your spirituality, how you think you're given those, I think it is our obligation. My North Star is that sense of duty that sense of obligation to give back to this community what it's given to me. I'm not the person I was when I moved or bought property in '94. This community has healed me in many ways.
Yeah.
And, we went through Katrina. And I had a great little house on Ward Avenue, 24 feet above sea level, right in the middle of the block. When I went to get homeowners insurance, when I moved there, they said, "Oh, you don't need flood insurance. It'll never flood where you are." And guess what? I got 4 feet of water in my house. And I didn't see that coming.
Yeah.
So, I have a mortgage now. I wouldn't have had a mortgage if I had flood insurance.
Yeah.
But losing what I lost in Katrina gave me so much more because for the first time in my life, I really needed help.
Yeah, and on that point, losing something, I think for somebody who's, at least in my estimation, somebody who spent so much time investing in the history of the community, investing in understanding more about the community, having gone through Katrina, experienced loss, to me, having gratitude is the perfect North Star because you understand how fragile it is.
It is.
And what can be taken away.
Yeah.
I mean, we're one bad mayorship away from this city turning into some industrial nightmare that has the priorities wrong. Everything that we are, all this high income, the trappings are given to members of the city. That's why we had a 57% increase in the entry-level wages of police officers because the trappings of our business community, there's probably more meat left on the table there, in terms of like attracting businesses so we can do those things. But to me, gratitude is just the absolute perfect sort of guiding light. It's
a leveler. It takes your ego out of it.
Yeah.
Because this is not about me. And I'm very uncomfortable talking about myself. I can talk to you all day about a project I've been involved in or an organization I believe in. But to have to reveal myself it's uncomfortable. And the scrutiny, excuse me again, of running for mayor is kind of funny because I have these big car signs on both sides of my Highlander, and I like to sing when I'm in the car. So I was going to a meeting at McElroy's the other morning, early breakfast meeting, and I'm at Washington in 90, and I am singing along, me and Nicki Minaj. I am just getting it. And I turn around, I look, and there's this guy next to me in the car, and he's just staring at me. He gives me a big thumbs
there you
up.
Go, yeah.
I'm not sure if I got a vote there or I didn't get a vote. But
at least in that moment, for sure.
Yeah, so I'm self-conscious about the attention.
Sure.
But again, it's worth it. Because I feel that I can contribute. I know I contribute. I'm ready. The campaigning is an adventure. And I have, because I understand what communications means to a business, I hired a firm to handle my PR and communications, which was, my son was stunned at that because my son said, "Mom, you never give up that control to anybody."
Yeah.
But
well, I can tell you because that's who I've been talking to kind of get you in here.
They're great.
Fantastic team.
Yeah,
very well thought out, very careful, and they've been a dream to deal with. So I think you're very blessed to have such a wonderful group of people around you. But
I appreciate you recognizing that. And I also want to say, having Brian and Marie Sanderson on my team is remarkable. I don't know if you know them.
I don't.
But you need to do a podcast with them.
All day.
These are two remarkable people.
Okay.
They were part of Governor Barber's team that came down here and helped after Katrina. Just amazing folks. Brian is my campaign manager. Marie is helping with policy.
Brian sounds like a good guy.
Oh, they're amazing. They
based on his name.
Well, yeah, sure. But as an example, their most recent project that you may know is the Mississippi 30-Day Fund that they instituted after COVID, where businesses could, a very simple application, could get $3,000 to help with cash flow. That was a brainchild of Brian and Marie. They saw it happen in other states, and they brought it to Mississippi.
Wonderful.
These are the kind of folks who we want to choose Ocean Springs and to stay here, because it's all about making that choice to be in Ocean Springs. Invest your dreams, invest your money, invest your potential. Raise your kids there. Know your kids are safe walking to school. Know your kids are safe coming back. And most importantly to me, be a place when your kids grow up, they go to college, they make a choice, they choose to come back
That's
here.
right.
That's
right.
the future. We want them to make that choice.
That's right. I do want to say also that I think you deserve to give yourself a little credit, because what it sounds like you're doing is continuing to vet and hire the right people. And I have no doubt that that's going to translate over to, your mayorship as well.
I would hope so, and I like the sound of that. I will say I have worked for 25 years with the people who are at City Hall. Many of them have spent their careers there. Patty Gaston, who's the city clerk, is as good as you get. And the city has an amazing team of great employees. I'm thrilled that the police department got their raise. There are many others who deserve those raises. I think we have an extraordinary public works department. I've worked with those guys. I've been in ditches with them. I've been in a bucket truck looking down inside a hollow oak tree.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, that's scary. Yeah. But these folks are remarkable. They're wonderful.
Yeah.
And they deserve to have pride in what they're doing. They deserve to be paid well.
That's right.
That does not necessarily mean raising taxes.
Sure. To your point, because you are, very much business. You've got a great business perspective, and the details on how to attract people, paying attention to the gateways, as you put it. Pursuing those business interests yield the trappings of higher income, more
Yes.
benefits, things of that nature. So they are certainly necessary, and that's a perspective that needs to be taken seriously.
Yes, that's absolutely true. Years ago, before I moved here, some great folks, Herb Moore, Fred Moran, Britt Sandbloom, these folks started the Historic Ocean Springs Association, which we call Jose. And some people call it Hosa. Those of us who've been in it call it Jose, because Herb used to tell us when they first tried to start the organization, people would say, "Oh, no way, Jose, can you get that done?" But now here we are 31 years later. I've been a member of Jose since probably 90-something. This is a group of individuals and business members who dues start at $25. Businesses are $100. In the period of 31 years, Jose has put over $700,000 back into the community and projects. That's remarkable.
Oh, yeah,
and
for sure.
It's all citizen driven, and it was the same thing we're talking about. These folks at that time, again, you go back to 1989, say around that period of time. They were business people, small business people. Most of the businesses were on Washington. These folks said, look, we got to do something to spruce ourselves up. So you had a couple of folks who were interior designers, a couple of folks into communications or design, and they said, let's do facades. So the group got together and said, how can we help each other make our facades on our businesses look more interesting? From that came an application that they helped submit with Margaret Miller for Main Street program, Main Street Tourism Program, which is now combined with the Chamber and is a great program. The next thing Jose said, well, Marshall Park, which is right there as you come into town. It's like the welcome mat to the city. Let's make it a park again. It was not really maintained as a public park. The bandstand was not there. The bandstand had been moved years ago, and it was over by Aunt Jenny's on the water. And it had been enclosed during World War II, and it was rented to an airman for $19 a month. He lived there with his wife and baby, if you can imagine that. So Jose's first thing was to raise money and work on Marshall Park. Again, it's about branding the city. We talk about it in those terms now. Back then, it was just, what can we do to bring business and make it better here? Jose raised money. The bandstand came back. Great folks. Malcolm Boget, Greg Denyer others worked on that bandstand, brought it back to its full potential. Look at Marshall Park. It's a great sound. Great community green space. It says you're coming into a neat place. And Jose maintains that. We pay for the grass. We pay for the utilities. It's a gift we give.
That's wonderful.
And then across the street, you look at the depot, you have these 3 beautiful pieces of sculpture by William Ludwig from Louisiana. I'm the chair of the public art program, which is PAPOS, and that was one of our most recent installations, was that art. You come across the railroad track like I did years ago, trying to find Ocean Springs, And now you see that beautiful park that Jose did on one side, this amazing art on the other side, and you know immediately, looking at those trees, you're in a very special
That's
place.
right.
I don't want to see this become anywhere. We don't need to be anywhere USA. We cannot become common. We cannot lose those qualities.
I agree. It's a source of identity.
And the way we do it is by encouraging community action. We don't need to say, don't do this, restrict this, don't. It didn't work in tree committee. People we're still taking down trees without ever bothering to put in an application. We're still fighting about trees. If you educate folks well enough, they're going to recognize for themselves, I should put a tree in my yard because this is what it will do for me. I should do this. I should do that. You don't need to demand people do something, but you can educate them as to why it's the right thing to do.
And trust that the citizens will make the right decisions.
You have to trust. Right. You can never take an attitude that I know more than you do, that I should tell you how to live your life. No, I can say collectively, we as the city are one big family, and this is what works for us together. But I'm on, self-reliance and self-responsibility. That's the name. As soon as we rely on other people to tell us what to do and to make us do the right thing, we lose that internal motivation to know how to do the right thing and to do it for that reason. And
it also, I think, makes it difficult to appreciate the value of the right thing.
Yeah.
Because somebody's given that to us. I know we don't have a lot of time. I would like to...
Man, did we talk for an hour already?
I would like to kind of ask you, it seems, though, that, based on what we've talked about, I mean, you're obviously well aware of kind of community needs, what the people bring to the city, what the art means to the city. It seems a solid or a predictable nexus of opportunity for you would be the Mary C. What ideas do you have for the Mary C?
Oh, I love the Mary C. I love what was the Mary C. It's now 1600 government because it's not the same. If you go by there, there's a fabulous sculpture on the west side, polyillumination.
Yeah, I love that.
Thank you. And I chaired that project.
Did you?
I did.
Well done.
It was a Jose project. We were sitting in our room, the Jose room that overlooks that area of the campus there. And we had a fountain that we had put in decades ago, and it was not working well. And so we were thinking, what other kind of fountain can we put there? And this is a great joy of community groups and a great joy of Jose, because many of our best projects have come from somebody saying, what if we? And so when you have a situation someone feels comfortable enough to offer that little idea they've got in their mind, what if we? And one of us said, what if we didn't put a fountain there? What if we put something else? And then it became, well, what if we put a piece of art? And then it was, well, the Mary C's trying to get more people in here. What if we put a dissimilar piece of art? We put a piece of art that says, wow, something exciting and unusual is happening inside this building.
Yeah.
Don't judge it by its 1927 facade. And out of that, I formed a coalition with the Fader Foundation, with the Mary C. We had a group of 12 different folks who were on our core team. We created a call for art. We published it out. We had 12 remarkable submissions from local artists, and we really wanted to show preference for local and regional artists on this one. And the two guys who put in that winning entry, polyillumination, are Colin McQuilkin and Brian Milling, both who grew up here. They played softball together in elementary school.
Wow.
Brian is a very talented lighting artist. He tours with some large rock and roll bands all over the country and the world. And Brian is just a remarkable man. He can do anything. He's been with Beau Rivage doing design work for them for years. But these two guys put together that wonderful prototype. And when our committee saw it, we loved everything that we got from other folks, but that just said what we needed to say.
And that's what art does.
That's what art does.
It speaks to you. Yep.
And so we have that beautiful piece outside the Mary C, and then the Mary C has fallen into this debacle of conflict.
What I don't like is controversy.
Yeah.
And it's kind of like maybe I got this from the military, maybe my father, but if I have controversy in my house, it's between the members of my family.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But you don't need to be involved in that.
Right,
And so
exactly.
when the controversy is occurring in my house, the house of my city, I don't like that.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And it was so public too. And I felt like we were airing out dirty laundry, and I didn't think it was
it's
handled very well. And
really well. It's not over.
yeah.
It may still go to litigation, so I'm going to be very careful about what I say because I was
Sure.
involved and a member of the Friends.
And we don't have to speak on that.
Well, I don't
by
mind
the way,
speaking
so.
about it because my vision that I have for the Mary C is where I would like to see the city take this mess, and the old Friends of the Mary C also. Come on, let's get together and go forward. We all want the same thing.
Yeah.
We want that building used to its full potential. We want to offer those extraordinary opportunities to bring art into your life to everybody. My vision for the Mary C sees it as a transformational project that takes it from what it was, and not to criticize this mayor individually, but his vision was so limited to take what was being done by a group of volunteers, award-winning, from the Friends of the Mary C, who annually raised between $250,000 and $400,000 to operate that center, raised it on their own, and spent it. All volunteers, volunteer board of directors. None of us ever got a shareholder. We only care about the Mary C. And then all of a sudden, you have this disagreement between personalities. And as a result of those personality differences, you have a divorce, essentially, between the Friends of the Mary C, who had had a management agreement with the city for years and years and years, renewed annually.
Which included funding from the city as well, right?
Some years, not always.
Yeah.
Some years there was as much as $25,000 that came in from the city. And the city owned the building, so the city maintained the building. So, yes, they've been good partners in many ways. The overall vision for the Mary C could always have been more. 1 year, and personally, I should say in context, I've served on that board numerous times, 3 different terms, not consecutively. I don't like to have one person I try not to overwhelm an organization.
Sure.
You know when to leave. It's like going to a party. You need to know when to leave. And then again, that's part of what I was referring to earlier about mentoring. That is my job now. And for the Mary C for the Friends to have been divorced and out of that building, it's enormously sad. And I go by and I see that sculpture there, and it just looks sad to me at this point. For the mayor or the city to make a lateral move and just replace what was going on at the Mary C with similar classes does not make what's happened worthwhile. There's been so much damage done, so many hurt feelings, a lot of angry words. And I don't like any of that. I think it's disrespectful. I think it's undignified. And like you were referencing before, and I was saying we're a product. That's not what you want the public to hear. You want public involvement in making something better. But you don't need name throwing, and we don't need. That's not the image of Ocean Springs.
That's right.
I see the Mary C now as an opportunity to build it into a much bigger economic driver for the community. I'm familiar with the Penland School and the John C. Campbell School, both of which are in North Carolina.
I read about that on your site. Yeah.
Those have been economic drivers for the entire part of the state. We have that opportunity here.
Sure.
And the big difference is, for me, I don't see this as just let's replace it with classes that are being offered somewhere else in Ocean Springs. There's a problem in my heart about cities supporting, with city tax dollars, supporting competition for local businesses. You've got a lot of places downtown you can go to take art lessons. You can go downtown and you can do different crafts. There are many things that were going on at the Mary C that could be done elsewhere in town. You don't want the city competing with small business.
Yeah.
That's a unique place. The Mary C should be an opportunity for us to show our entire region for arts and crafts. We have boat building. We have cast nets. This should be a place where we can tell the entire story of the Gulf Coast through arts and crafts being offered at the Mary C.
That gets me fired up.
Sure, and it should. Instead of 1 or 2 hour classes that you and I might go to, let's make it a place where people come from all over the country for 3 days or long weekends or a week-long class. A unique opportunity that's not duplicated somewhere else. Work in concert with WAMA, the Walter Anderson Museum. Work with the OR. Work with the Friends of Arts, Culture, and Education, which used to be the Friends. Bring those people to town. When you have classes where people are going to stay, those folks are going to eat in your restaurants.
That's right.
They're going to stay in your hotels.
That's right.
They're going to stay in your short-term rentals. That has real economic weight for this community.
I love every bit of that.
It's all about economics.
That's right.
And it could be expanded. That entire block, which includes the old Tacony School, can be incorporated. It doesn't mean moving out folks that are there. The Lighthouse Academy, which is a school for kids with dyslexia, is housed in one of the old classrooms at Tacony. Why couldn't special skill learning in arts and crafts be incorporated into that regional arts center there?
You know, Melanie, I'm a woodworker. You know, I enjoy doing a lot of woodworking, and we'll wrap this up after this.
No.
But just to kind of
I'm not in a hurry to go. I'm enjoying this.
Okay, perfect. But yeah, so I've always wanted to do one of these kind of distant 3-day, 5-day woodworking, like you learn from a real master craftsman. And so that's what I thought about. And I think that's kind of what you're describing, is that like a place, a destination for art, you know, where you can go and kind of transcend yourself a bit.
Yeah.
Go to a community where you can learn not just art, but art about that community, while also taking in the culture of that. Because all that art is an expression of the self, the culture, the society.
Your culture.
Yeah, absolutely.
It is the language of your culture.
That's right.
That is what, and the hard work that I was talking about earlier, all of those things, that is the language of your culture.
Well, I'm fired up, Melanie.
I hope you are. And the other thing is, Brian, we're in a unique opportunity now to be in line for all kinds of money. There are billions, not millions, billions of dollars that are going to come down this way as a result of the BP oil spill. And those funds, those are not government handouts. These are not our tax dollars.
Yeah.
We were wronged by that event.
Sure.
The funds from that are going to flow down here. We need an aggressive community team that has these portal projects ready.
That's proactive.
That has vision. I would engage the community in a long conversation about where we want to go. And it's not just downtown. I spent part of Saturday with Mary Anderson Picard, who, if you've not met her, you need to talk to that lady.
Okay.
And she and I are going out later this week so she can show me some of the cultural areas that are so important to her in East Ocean Springs. Places Walter Anderson was, you know, that's her dad, and she has all these memories of East Ocean Springs and beautiful Bell Fountain and where the Indians came in there, and the mounds and the middens that are there from the Indians in the past. Historic Ocean Springs is not just downtown.
Sure.
And while we want businesses in East Ocean Springs, and we certainly do, that area is ripe for development. But we don't need to treat them any differently than we do downtown. That is as historic and as vital a part of Ocean Springs as government and Washington. So there's a beauty to this place. There's a whole beauty to this place. We need to pull ourselves together. The city has spent money contracting to try to bring in franchises from across the country to Ocean Springs. Well, there's a place for franchises.
Sure.
I like Wendy's hamburgers. I'm okay with that. But at what cost?
That's right. I think that's the right question.
Is that where we really want to prioritize our efforts? I think our efforts are better spent supporting the small businesses that are the lifeblood of this community.
That's right.
My friend Larry Cosper was an alderman here years ago, and I'm sorry you don't know him because he's passed away now, but he was a great businessman and a real visionary. And he and John Blossman and Fred Moran years ago contracted with students from, I think, architecture and maybe planning from Mississippi State. And they invited that team to come down to Ocean Springs and with fresh eyes, vision, what could change downtown. And as a result of that, Cache Alley became a secondary road. Visions for infills along Government Street, that sort of comprehensive planning. Having people say, this isn't all we're going to be, and we know we're going to grow, and we know we're going to change, But let's do it with a common conversation. Let's everybody have a vision.
Yeah.
It sounds altruistic. It sounds unreasonable. And I assure you, Brian, I am a business person. I love to balance a checkbook. I love to balance a financial statement. I can read a P&L, and I am a happy girl.
Well, I don't think anybody could take a not realize that after this conversation. I mean,
I appreciate that.
You're definitely in tune with that. So
well, there's two sides to everything. You have to take a business approach when you want something done.
Yeah.
And I'm ready to be mayor of this city. I think this is my calling in life. It's not just my motivation and my North Star. I think that North Star has led me here. I learned the lessons of Katrina. I learned that community is not just writing a couple of checks to a nonprofit a few times a year. Community means getting out there and getting dirty.
That's right. Tangible effort.
Yeah, my friend Dominic Skelton said that here's the thing he learned after Katrina. The wealthy man just had a bigger pile of trash. And that's stuck with
wonderful.
me. You know, it's stuck with me.
Yeah.
And it's not the things we collect, it's the memories we collect and what we do with our lives. And for some reason, my destiny brought me to Ocean Springs. It's made me a better person. I have loved every project I've been involved in, from the Land Trust to public art, the Mary C. We didn't even talk about 12 Oaks, which is probably my favorite place in all of Ocean Springs. If you can give me a minute to chat about that.
100%, yeah.
I don't know if you're familiar with the Land Trust for the Mississippi Coastal Plain.
I know of it. Okay. I think it's 70,000 acres, right? Of
we actually have 10,000 acres of protected property along the 6 coastal counties.
I see. Okay.
The Land Trust is a 501c3 nonprofit. I was chair of that group and honored by them. I also got to participate in lobbying Congress in D.C., and I've been up there twice talking to subcommittees about green space and tax credits for conservation, because, again, if you don't combine the business aspect along with the goodwill and your sight and your vision, you have a one-sided equation, and it's not going to work.
Sure.
So we can all say conservation's great. We'd love people to give property be protected and forever through the Land Trust, but at the same time, if we don't go to Congress and convince them to keep those tax credits, it doesn't ever happen. So you have to have both sides of that. But my experience with the Land Trust has been great in many ways. One, it taught me a tremendous amount about mitigation and dealing with wetlands, which puts me in a good position to deal with economic growth along Highway 90 towards 57. But the greatest joy for me was discovering 12 Oaks, which is a property. If you go up Hanley Road in Ocean Springs, Brian, and you cross Highway 90, there's Bobby Tyson's tire store, which everybody knows. Take that road, and it bends to the west, to the left, and you'll go to a coastal preserves property called 12 Oaks. 12 Oaks is 30 acres owned by the Land Trust and Coastal Preserves. We work collectively to preserve it. There's an old house there. It backs up to Old Fort Bayou. The property was owned by a slave named Joanna Smith Blunt years ago, and she was either given that property or allowed to buy it with money she was given before she was emancipated. So you're looking at 1860s.
Sure, yeah.
She was given this 30 acres by her, or purchased it, but she eventually came down here after she'd been emancipated. She moved onto that property with her husband. I think they had 9 or 11 children. Only a few of them survived. And she sold part of that property, where we actually have a house there now at 12 Oaks. The house that was built there was sold to a church, black church. And there are still people in this community that can remember torchlit baptisms on Old Fort Bayou from that house.
Really?
It's amazing. The thing I love the most about Johanna's story is that about 10 years after she moved to that property, there was a knock on the door, and it was the woman who had been her owner. The woman who had owned Johanna had lost all her money in the war. She'd lost her husband. She had nowhere to go. And that former slave took that woman in and she lived with that family till she passed away. It's this feeling that you get.
Wow.
We talk about the feeling in Ocean Springs. The feeling you get at 12 Oaks is this remarkable peace. And the fact that Johanna saw that woman and opened that door is a spirit you think you and I, as privileged as we have been in our lives, we think we know what that means, and I don't think we do. And
No.
there's something remarkable about that property. So one of my greatest joys is that for 7 years, I worked with Judy Steckler, who was the director of the Land Trust, and Lolly Barnes, Lolly Rash now, excuse me, and we developed an artist in residence project there through the Land Trust. So for the last 8 years, someone has been selected, either 1 or 2 artists a year. They can stay in the house if they want, or they can use it as a studio. And they do a residency somewhere between 4 and 6 months, and they create art that it is inspired by 12 Oaks. Some of the artists have done things that remind us of Johanna. Some things didn't relate one way or the other. Mm-hmm. But it has been an extraordinary opportunity to watch artists work on that property, bring the community in, because we had community workshops that they could participate in, and tell that story of 12 Oaks.
That's amazing.
It's a great story.
Yeah.
There are places like that all over Ocean Springs. There are these remarkable little special places that make this community different than anywhere else, and we cannot just become franchises. We have to maintain that quality that makes Ocean Springs so remarkable, so special, such a healing place that has been known from the first people who came here. Mm-hmm. And it's our responsibility to maintain that, to promote it, and protect it.
Well, Melanie, you made a fantastic case of why that person should be you.
Thank you very much.
And
that's very kind.
I'm floored at how you've described Ocean Springs, what it means to you, how you've connected with the city. That last story you told me.
It moves you.
Yeah.
It changes you.
Yeah, it got me a little
changed me.
emotional, if I'm honest. But I don't want to take up too much of your time. I will say, again,
I'm surprised by that, because some of your podcasts are like 3 hours.
Well, I'm trying to respect your time. Believe me, I can occupy it. But
I thank you for that.
But no, thank you for coming on the show. I wish you the best of luck, and I'm excited about the prospect of you being our mayor. And
again, I do have one more question for you.
Oh, for me?
Yeah, if you don't mind.
No, go ahead.
I think I'm going to probably ask this on behalf of anybody who listens to your show. Catherine and I were trying to decide on the name of your podcast and whether it had a secret meaning or an obvious meaning. And the shop and chivalry.
Yeah.
I can give you my guess on it, but I'd love to hear why you named it that.
This should be fun.
Okay. Well, having met you now, I think manners matter to you, so that's the chivalry part. Mm-hmm. I think some sort of dialogue that is civil and respectful, even if we disagree. And the shop is kind of like you're talking shop about what's going on in the world. Is that really it? Did I guess it?
Yeah, that's
Whoa.
it. Yeah. It's just, people talk about things. I want people to talk to me about their passions and the way that they talk about them. Talk shop,
Yeah.
If I'm with my gearhead buddies, we talk shop in a way that we can understand. My wife doesn't care. If we talk air traffic control, my wife doesn't care, right? But then chivalry, I think of the idea of, the strength of a knight. Right,
yeah.
and somebody who's strong and capable to confront the darkness, has that courage to do so, but then can also provide comfort to the meek, and being respectful in that way.
Yeah,
that's how I came up with it.
I like that.
Oh, thank you.
Well, I wish you the best of luck with this podcast, because you have such a nice manner, and I've been so impressed with the podcasts. I've only listened to like 4 of them so far, and I'll listen to the rest of them. I may not listen to myself. I don't like to listen to myself, but I hope others do.
Right.
And,
thank you.
I thank you for this opportunity. It's been really fun.
Well, it's been a blast for me. Is there anything you want to add on? Maybe how people can support you better, any sort of social media or your website. And I'll put all that stuff also on the site and share it as well. But
people can go to melanieformayor.com and get a comprehensive look on me overall. And then we have 6 or 7 springboard points that we think are very core to the future of this community. We are, people want to hear details, but they also have a short attention span sometimes.
Sure.
So the long versions are on the website, and we hope people will read and dial in. If you want to email me or contact me in some way with opinions or responses to those, I'm eager for that. But we're all over Facebook, Instagram,
Wonderful,
Twitter,
and I'll share all those as well. So
you.
again, Melanie, thank you so much
Thank
for
you so much.
chatting with me, and everybody, goodbye. See ya.
Thanks.
Melanie, that's it.